Hey, this is Lynn. I am here because I want to respond specifically to a couple comments I received on my channel. Since my daughter's wedding, I have been trying to get caught up on comments, and I came across one that's a little bit older, well, maybe a day or so ago, and then one today. This is Monday, May 13th. I posted my weigh-in video and I got a comment. I got called out, which is great. I love being called out by viewers because, I got to have people hold me accountable. But I had mentioned that I didn't like to share what I eat in a day because I do think it's all very individual. But I got called out and I appreciate that. I really do. And I've actually responded already. So this video is for you, McKenna, because I want to be able to respond to your comments. And I figured my response may be helpful to other people. And again, I do appreciate your comment. I actually did already responded, but I figured I'm going to go and I'm going to create a video now. And so McKenna, she basically said, "Hi, Lynn. Okay, so you don't want to share what you eat. Do you just say beef and lamb? Well, do you drink coffee? Any dairy? Do you use electrolytes? If yes, which ones? Do you intermittent fast? What skincare do you use?" I told you I sounded just like you, rosacea and all. I'm 55, and if you come in here and say people need to find their way, well, thanks to brave people like you, Lynn, it's how we find our way. Good point. See, I forget these things as I've been on my journey. I forget that I was listening to a lot of people at the beginning too, and I was just soaking up everything they said because I didn't know what to do. So, good point. Your help is appreciated and valued more than you know. Thank you for reminding me of that. Please don't forget where you were before Carnivore, and me reaching out to you is because I have so much in common with you. Like, my tongue has been so fat. I don't know why, because it isn't from how I used to eat. And there were plenty of times my tongue would not be swelled up fat, not to the point of needing the ER, but my teeth are deeply imprinted in it. But even before going carnivore or even keto, there were many days I would notice, oh my God, I have a skinny tongue after all, and I've never been able to figure out what it's the triggers. I feel like right now red meat is a trigger because it's what I'm eating. So in all honesty, it's scaring me because I don't eat any other meat, just ground beef or steaks. I pray to God red meat isn't the culprit. And then McKenna, you said, wait, I forgot. Sheesh, I eat eggs. Could it be the eggs? I was told to eat them, that they are low histamine. And then McKenna says, I hope to hear from you, and I'm near Austin. It may pop over, but I can't be in the heat either, so be careful. It will definitely be hot. Yeah, I'm a little nervous. But anyways, I did make a little bit of a response. I'll read you my response, but I want to go into more detail. So I told her, I said, you make an excellent point. I truly appreciate being called out on things like this. It's definitely easy for me to forget where I started. I do believe each of us responds a bit differently. So I guess what I mean is that I don't want anyone to take what I eat as the ultimate solution for them. But I can see how it would be helpful as a starting point to work with. I said, just for you, I will do a video about what I eat. I hope you don't mind me sharing your comment, and I'm sharing it before she responds, but I'm hoping it'll be okay because it's beneficial, hopefully to other people. And I said, in case I forget to emphasize it in my video, what I eat has changed several times, and I'm constantly evaluating how I respond to food. So I think that's one reason why I haven't been like gung-ho on showing what I eat, because it has changed so much. And not everyone has to be as picky as I do and as restrictive as I do. But I have to remember there are people like me viewing my channel because they're having reactions like me. So I also responded, eggs yolks are low in histamine, but egg whites are high in histamine. So it could be the eggs. I referred her to my histamine video. It was very detailed about histamine, and there's a lot of high histamine foods in the carnivore diet. So it's specifically for carnivores. And then, hope to see you in Austin. But I totally get the whole heat thing. I am nervous about the heat. But anyways, that was one of the comments. And again, totally appreciate it. And then I want to go ahead and look up the comment that I had not yet responded to because I hadn't gotten there yet. Let me scroll down. Here we go. Before I move on to the next comment, I was just doing the editing for this video and I realized that I really didn't respond to the question about intermittent fasting. Like everything else I've done, it has varied over the last year. I'm probably doing a little bit less intermittent fasting now than I was before, but in a lot of respects, my normal routine tends to be, by definition, intermittent fasting. In the past, I would occasionally do a 24-hour fast. I have not done beyond a 24-hour fast. That may be something that I do. It's on my list of things that I might try. And I know I hear people talk about how great it is. So I'm pretty certain there will come a time where I will do longer fasts. But for me, an intermittent fast is typically about 16 hours. Sometimes I go 20. And I was doing a lot more intermittent fasting when I wasn't doing any coffee, because I would stop eating probably somewhere around 6 or 7 p.m. And then I wouldn't eat again until maybe 2 in the afternoon the next day. So that was a pretty decent fast. Right now, the time I stop eating in the evening is about the same. In fact, sometimes it's even earlier, depending on how much I eat. But I break the fast with the coffee that I have in the morning. And as I've been getting up earlier and earlier, the coffee is coming earlier and earlier. And I do consider it a break of the fast because of the heavy cream. I probably don't have a ton of calories, so I'm not sure if technically it's considered breaking a fast, because I probably have maybe a couple tablespoons of the heavy cream. I don't know how many calories that is off the top of my head, but it's definitely not really as intermittent fasting, because sometimes I'll finish eating at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and then I'll have my coffee at 6:30 or 7. So that's still kind of a fast. But then other nights we'll finish eating at 6 o'clock or 6:30, and I'll have my coffee at 6 a.m. And so that's not even really 12 hours. It's close, but it's not even really 12 hours. And so it just changes as time, as my schedule changes and things change in my life. But ultimately, I would think it would be really good to at least have 12 hours without eating. And so right now, probably not as much intermittent fasting as I was doing before, but several days a week, I'd say I get at least a 12-hour fast. So I'd say do whatever works best for you. I'm a strong believer that you need that downtime. And, my book club, we did Dr. Jason Fung's The Obesity Code, and he explains why that significant fast is, overnight or evening to sometime during the next day is really important, especially for your insulin levels. And so, yeah, I would highly recommend at least doing a 12-hour fast. 16 is even better. And one of these days, I'll probably do a longer one. I'll probably try for a 3-day. We'll see how it goes. Last time I tried to do a 3-day, I only made it to the end of the second day, but I wasn't eating a carnivore diet back then. So we'll see how it goes. Maybe one of these days I will do a 3-day fast. Alrighty, so another from McKenna. So she says, "Hi Lynn, glad to hear you're getting this live. How amazing and exciting." And this was in response to my video from Saturday where I went into detail about the meetup and the walk around Green Lake and how I did with the heat and the UV index and all that. So she says again, "I swear I sound so much like you, and I've been suspicious of mast cell as of 2020. Okay, so who do I go to for a correct diagnosis? Hopefully you can find an allergist that will be familiar with mast cell activation syndrome. I don't know. I did get diagnosed by an allergist, and he's also an immunologist. And diagnosis, yes. Treatment, I ended up going to see a naturopathic doctor. The allergist just wants to throw medication at you, and that's exactly what they did. But to get a diagnosis, you need to, have the reactions. They need to respond to antihistamines. So if you're having reactions and you're taking antihistamines, like say you pop a Benadryl if your tongue swells, or Claritin if you have gut issues, Pepcid, which is famotidine. That's you need to try H1 and an H2 blocker. The H1 blockers are like the Claritin and the Benadryl or Allegra, those types of medications. And Pepcid is the most common H2 blocker to try. So they also have to have symptoms present in at least 2 organ systems. So you're already explaining that you have tongue swelling, and it sounds like you have heat intolerance. I'm going to guess you probably have a whole bunch of other symptoms. I will try to bring up, and when I'm editing this video, I'll bring up a slide of the variety of symptoms that are involved. I would definitely recommend going to a website called tmsforacure.org, and I do believe the TMS stands for the Mast Cell Society. But there are some diagrams, and even if you Google mast cell activation syndrome and look under images, there are some good images from the TMS for a Cure that tell you like all the organ systems and what types of symptoms that you may have. And I mean, when I looked through each organ system, I had symptoms in all of the organ systems, like literally all of them. And so most people that have mast cell disease versus just histamine intolerance are going to have more severe symptoms and often a wide variety of symptoms in different organ systems. So like I said, I'll put a link, but take a look at that and see. Now, there are blood tests and a urine test that can be done. And these tests theoretically need to be done while you're having a reaction. So if you go to see an allergist first and you think you might have mast cell disease, the allergist will probably order a serum tryptase, which is a blood test, and a 24-hour urine collection. And that is is exactly what it sounds like. You get a container and you need to get it. I usually pick it up from the lab ahead of time. And then once you start to have a reaction, you're going to start collecting your urine. And it tests for, I think, 3 different things. And these are all things that can be elevated if your mast cells are degranulating dysfunctionally. And the serum tryptase just tests your tryptase levels, which is one of the chemicals that your mast cells releases when it degranulates. And if it's over, if it's elevated, then that's another indication. Now, for me, I also have a condition called hereditary alpha tryptosemia, which is a genetic. I figured that out with a genetic test where you do a cheek swab. But when my mast cells degranulate, they produce extra copies of tryptase. So even when I'm not having a reaction, my tryptase is always elevated. And it does contribute to symptoms. And unfortunately, that's unless my genes get corrected on a genetic level, on the DNA level, I'm probably going to have to deal with that for the rest of my life because it's just a genetic mutation. But you can have mast cell activation syndrome without hereditary alpha tryptosemia, and in that case, you should see the rise in tryptase during a reaction, and it would be probably more normal if you're not having a reaction. But that's basically the diagnostic criteria. Symptoms more than in 2 or more organ systems, they respond to antihistamines, and you have to have at least one of those labs that are abnormal, and that's pretty much will give you a diagnosis. Now, for me, because my tryptase levels were over 20, there was some question about whether I had mast cell activation syndrome versus systemic mastocytosis, which is more serious. They're both serious, but systemic mastocytosis can lead to some cancers. It can be it can be more serious as it progresses if you don't get it under control. And so I ended up needing to have a bone marrow biopsy, because the only way to tell if it's which one it is to do the bone marrow biopsy, because with systemic mastocytosis, the actual morphology or of the mast cells is abnormal. So you've got these funky looking mast cells, and you have too many mast cells. And so with mast cell activation syndrome, your mast cells look fine and they are the correct quantity. They're just dysfunctional in that they're overreactive. So instead of you have too many mast cells producing, spitting out the correct amount of chemicals, we have a normal amount of mast cells spitting out chemicals too often. So the differentiation is kind of like, okay, we know that you got this one versus this one, but the treatment, as far as I know, is the same. But anyways, I needed to have the bone marrow biopsy. Most people don't need to have that. And honestly, even if your tryptase was elevated over 20 and it turns out that they need to figure it out, just get it with sedation. That's what I did. It was, done under sedation, conscious sedation, and it was okay. It wasn't a big deal. I felt a little pressure. That was it. I was awake the whole time. I was completely aware of what was going on, but it didn't hurt. It just felt like pressure. So I've heard about people that do it with, they go someplace where they won't do it with sedation, and man, can it hurt, but it was fine for me. I was worried about it, and then it ended up being not a big deal. A little bit of sore, kind of like someone just punched you, the next day. Tylenol took care of that. I don't even know if I took Tylenol. But anyways, I digress. But anyways, I hope that answers your question about getting a correct diagnosis. Okay, my screen froze. But anyways, it's not easy to get a correct diagnosis and to find doctors that really know much about it. And I know you mentioned that you're in Texas, and I don't think there's any experts on mast cell activation syndrome in Texas. I know that there's like 4 places in the U.S., and they're all farther east. I do see a naturopathic doctor for treatment, and it's definitely been helpful to have somebody who can actually care about helping me identify my triggers. One thing I would highly recommend is that you get a mycotoxin test. A lot of people with mast cell activation syndrome have elevated mycotoxins. And especially you live in a humid environment. I mean, Washington State, there's a lot of rain. Can be damp here, so there's definitely a lot more mold spores around. I did test positive for mycotoxins, did a home inspection. My home is very clean, so I'm suspecting I don't clear mold properly. But that's something I would definitely get tested for, and you can do that through a naturopathic doctor. Okay, so McKenna says she's 55. Excellent. So about my age, I just turned 56. Have been sick in many autoimmune diseases, even a heart condition, heat intolerance, cold intolerance, totally relate. Have Hashimoto's, hypothyroidism, just got diagnosed with hypercalcemia. So lots of going on. You recently got a diagnosis of hyperparathyroidism, scans being done. You have bone loss, kidney stones. The list is endless. So you got some conditions going on beyond what I have. So I can definitely only share with you my experience with the mast cell disease. I know that with the carnivore diet, I've gained bone. And I know that with mast cell activation syndrome, there's a risk for osteoporosis, but I have gained bone. So you're on the right track if you're doing a carnivore diet. And McKenna says she feels terribly overwhelmed. Oh, boy, can I relate. I understand that. So she says, I tried to eat lamb burger, one bite, and I had to spit it out. How do you eat yours? So I combine my lamb. If I do ground lamb, I combine it with beef. She wants to know if I eat bison. Yeah, I've tried bison. And I do like bison. I tend to not eat the bison now because it's lower and it's leaner. It's lower in fat, and I'm really trying to get my fat. So when I do eat my ground lamb, I combine it with 2 pounds of ground beef to 1 pound of ground lamb. I season it a lot with salt. Like I use a extra salt because all the salt I'm getting is from what I'm adding to my food. I don't get salt. I'm not eating any packaged foods. So all the sources of sodium from before I don't have. So I salt generously. So I would just wonder if you need to add more salt. And until you develop a taste, it, it can be a little challenging. So I found that adding more salt helps. Um, Not everybody, I mean, lamb is a different taste. I've learned to like it a lot. In fact, we recently just, through a local rancher, got two whole sheep. Um, and we had only gotten like half of a one before, and we like it a lot. So most of the time when I eat lamb, I actually eat lamb steaks or lamb chops. What I do is I do pop it in the sous vide for a while, maybe an hour or two, a couple hours, and then I just air fry it. And for me, the key is salt. And I don't use table salt. It's got too many microplastics in it, and it's just not that great for you. So I use, I'll put the links down below to the salts that I use, but I definitely use Redmond sea salt. I use the Malden salt. I just recently ordered some Celtic sea salt and some Baja Gold mineral salts, which we just tried for the first time today. It's actually really good. I like to use different salts because it gives you a little bit of a different mineral profile. But the salts are big, and hopefully you'll be okay with the salts. So let me see. So you said that you love ground bison better than ground beef. Again, try messing with the salt because I'm a little concerned about going too lean on the fats because the fats are really important for healing. So let's see. So you mentioned eggs low in histamine. I think you mentioned it again in the previous comment that I responded to. Quail eggs, the whole egg is low histamine, but other eggs, it's only the yolk. So I actually make scrambled egg yolks. I substitute water for the egg whites and whip it up, and the water makes it kind of more fluffy. And I do use a little bit of heavy whipping cream. Not everybody can handle that. There was a period before where I didn't. And that's why I wanted to really emphasize what I eat now is not necessarily what I was eating. So even though I'm going to go over what I eat, I don't want anyone to take it as this is what I need to be eating for sure. Because what I'm eating now is based on how far I've come in my healing. And it's what I can tolerate right now and what's serving me okay right now and not making me fall back on my progress. I would change that the moment I started to either have reactions or I was not getting the continued progress with my health. So if I was, honestly, when I first started the carnivore diet, I was eating anything animal based. So I was eating bacon and eggs, and I was eating pork and chicken, and I was eating cheese and the heavy cream, and drinking coffee, and sometimes drinking herbal tea. Sometimes still at the beginning drinking diet sodas, like the bad kind. Kind of transitioned over to Zevias. Because they're a little bit cleaner, but I was kind of, I wasn't ever, there was always a little bit that I was allowing in that was not strictly according to carnivore standards. I was even using a little bit of monk fruit drops in my coffee because I really kind of wanted this little bit of a sweetener. I'm really, it was an experiment for me at the beginning. I wasn't listening to anybody who had mast cell disease, so I didn't know. And I figured, well, I'm just going to see what happens and just eat everything in the world that's carnivore. So I would have ground beef with I'd make those power bowls, like ground beef, with eggs, whole eggs scrambled in there, shredded cheddar cheese, sometimes put some bacon bits. I mean, they're delicious, absolutely delicious. But there's a lot of histamine in those power bowls. And so my rosacea was improving a little bit, but really it wasn't improving that much until down the road a few months where I decided to do that histamine video, and I started looking back over my histamine list, and I went, oh my gosh, I am eating high histamine carnivore foods. I completely just blanked on the fact that there's a lot of carnivore foods that are high histamine. Anything aged or smoked, the egg whites, I mean, there's a whole bunch of stuff. So watch the video that I did on histamine on the carnivore diet, and hopefully it'll show you some things that might be culprits. And also I'd say, be patient with the process for sure. And it's a matter of kind of troubleshooting what works for you individually. But I would, since you're having the tongue swelling, I think keeping the histamines out of your diet is going to be super important. And, I explained in the video that we each have a histamine bucket, which is basically, different sizes for different people, and some people have little tiny ones and other people have nice big ones, and they can handle a lot of histamine. But when it comes to the histamine bucket, as you have histamine, your histamine level fills up, but you can be asymptomatic. You could be like, I can eat this and I feel fine. But like a bucket that gets full, that last drop, it overflows, and that's when you have symptoms. And so it can be really confusing when it comes to food, because if your histamine bucket is kind of drained, which mine is now, I can handle a little bit here and there. But if you have not been watching your histamine and that histamine bucket is full, or getting full, you may be okay, and then one day you eat something and boom, you've got symptoms. So that's why it can be really hard to pinpoint, especially like with the tongue swelling, like why is this happening? So I would definitely watch the video and really see if you can pinpoint and use that list. I put a link in the video description of the list from the Swiss interest group that has all the histamine information. It's a really good list. Okay, so let's see. So you said you have been suspicious of bacon flaring my rosacea, causing joint pain. Yes, bacon is high histamine. I had to avoid bacon for a really long time, and I still can't have very much. Like I mentioned in my recent video, I was staying overnight with my sister at the Airbnb right before the wedding, and I made scrambled eggs and bacon for breakfast, and I ate that. And I was okay that day, but the next day, I was in the bathroom all morning with diarrhea. My gut was not happy. And keep in mind, there's a lot of histamine receptors in your gut. And so if you have issues with histamine, your gut may tell you. It may not necessarily be rosacea. It may not be tongue swelling, or in my case, throat swelling. Sometimes it's nausea. Sometimes with me, it's the throat swelling and the heart palpitations, and I end up calling 911, and my blood pressure is through the roof, and sometimes every cell in my body feels like it's vibrating. Another thing that I have done, McKenna, is to keep my rescue medications with me all the time. I have found, and it's not an EpiPen. I do have an EpiPen. I've never had to use it. But I have found that if I keep, and I'll put a link to below, if I keep a chewable famotidine and a rapid dissolved Claritin with me, and I have a little pill thing, and lots of times I go out and I keep it in my bra because I don't necessarily want to bring my purse. I usually have a couple of each in this little pill container. If I chew one Pepcid and then take the rapid dissolved Claritin and let it dissolve in my mouth when I first feel the symptoms coming on, it will stop them and reverse them. Now, that doesn't mean that I can continue doing what I'm doing, because I have to make sure that I then go lay down and making sure I'm in a cool place. And because whatever triggered that reaction, I need to make sure I get away from it. I found that usually when I get a really bad reaction like that, it's usually, I feel like it's environmental, so usually I can change my environment and it'll subside, but I do need that medication sometimes. Now, since I've been draining my histamine bucket, I hardly ever need to use it. It's been a couple months, but you probably are going to need to avoid bacon. And I know bacon's delicious, so sorry. So McKenna says, sometimes, well, most of the time, and with all the terrible health issues I already have going on, it's hard to tell what's doing what. Yep. Agree. Um, I know I've had a lot of muscle pain just eating meat. I feel like electrolytes make me retain fluid. It's one of those things you kind of have to just test out. So be careful with the meat that you're eating, that it's not too aged. The one thing with ground meat is that it's higher in histamine. So if you can afford to get, meat that's not ground, that's preferable. It should not be aged. So if it says aged on it, definitely avoid it. Now, some people are more sensitive to the age of the meat than others. Like, for example, Michaela Peterson is very sensitive, and I know there's people that go to that order their meat from Billy Doe Meats, which is they don't hang their beef at all. And I go to a local rancher, and they only hang their beef for like 10 days, and I'm okay with that. So and also the longer the beef sits in the fridge, like if you cook it and, most of the time, like with me, I need to eat it within the next day, because the longer it sits there, the higher it has its own histamines that it develops. So with the meat, I'd say kind of take a look. And again, I cover all this in my histamine video. So it might be some of these types of aspects about the meat that might be an issue, potentially. Lamb, and if you can acquire a taste for it, lamb, they don't hang it at all. So it goes from, they butcher it and then it's frozen. And so a lot of people do well with lamb, because ruminant meats tend to be a little bit better, and the fresher the better. I don't know if you eat fish, but fish is a tricky one. Even the fresh fish off of the counter, where it says fresh and it's sitting there on ice, is not good from a histamine standpoint. It's better to have it flash frozen or super fresh, like just caught. With the electrolytes, hard to say. It's just one of those things that, as if you're eating these other things that are inflammatory for you, until you change that and get the inflammatory foods out of your diet, you won't really be able to evaluate the electrolytes. Sorry, I'm getting a little tickle in my throat here, so I'm going to drink some water. Okay. All right, so how many pounds of meat do you eat daily? It varies. I'm actually kind of a light eater, to be honest. Maybe a pound to a pound and a half on good days. Yeah, a pound and a half on good days, but usually a pound. I don't understand people that can eat 3 pounds of meat a day. I can't do it. I definitely have a tendency to undereat. So I don't know if I would take my own advice on this, or just go by what I'm eating. I've heard so many people say that it's definitely better if you can eat a little bit more, but I struggle to eat more than that. So, but I do make sure I'm getting at least a pound, and I kind of made like one main meal a day. Let's see. Also from the beginning, and I'm going to go specifically into more details of what I eat, but also from the beginning, did you just dive straight into hardcore carnivore? Yes, I did. I'm not saying I'd recommend that for everybody. I was fortunate. I didn't get the diarrhea that a lot of people get, but I tend to recommend that people ease their way into it. But some people are like me. You just dive in. Are you currently on any medications? I hope not, being nosy. Yes, I still am. Actually, my medication list was probably like 30 medications long. Now, as far as things that I have to get prescribed, it's this. I've got 2. So these are both compounded, and my naturopathic doctor orders these for me. So this one is ketotifen. In the US, it is sold as an eye drop, an antihistamine eye drop, which is why it has to be compounded. The compounding pharmacy takes the powder that they usually would dilute to make the eye drop, and they put it in a capsule. So this is a really good antihistamine. In fact, I started taking this before I started the carnivore diet, and I really started to see improvement in my reactivity with this. I had to work my way up to 1 milligram, and 1 milligram is not a whole lot because so I started at a quarter milligram because the first maybe 4 or 5 days you are so tired, like seriously intense drowsiness. But once the drowsiness is gone, you're fine. But then I increased it then to 0.5 milligram and drowsy again, but maybe not quite as long. And each time I increased, the drowsiness didn't last nearly as long. But that's why, and I had been reading from people who are on this for mast cell disease that they experience that as well. So I did do a trial last month off of it, and I can't get off of it yet. I ended up having issues with reactivity off of it. So nothing severe. I didn't have to take my rescue meds. Oh, wait a minute. Maybe I did. Because of the wedding, my brain is fried. But anyways, I think I did it. I think that is when I had that mast cell issue. I did a video on that. But at the time, I don't think I knew why, but I think it was like afterwards I realized, oh, wait a minute, I'm off of this medication. So anyways, I stay on that. For now, we'll see how things go. I am also on a low dose of naltrexone, 4.5 milligrams. This is also compounded because this comes from a tablet that I think the lowest dose of the tablet is 50 milligrams, and it is used for other reasons. But at a very low dose, it has found to be a very good anti-inflammatory, especially for the brain, and it's very good for the nervous system. And so because my C-reactive protein is always really high, and so my naturopathic doctor wants me to stay on this for now because of its anti-inflammatory properties. Again, I was on this before I started the carnivore diet. As far as how I felt, I did notice an improvement in my brain fog, but it wasn't until I started the carnivore diet that I really noticed a huge decrease in inflammation. So those are the two prescription medications I'm on. Because I have not acquired a taste for organs, I take this, and I don't know if this is going to show up reversed or not when I actually publish this video. For me, it looks reversed. I'm pretty sure it's going to show up okay for you. But this is the ancestral supplement. I believe that this is Paul Saladino's company, and this is 6 capsules a day, but I have been working up to 6 because it can cause histamine issues, get reactions because organs are higher in histamine. It was recommended to titrate up, so I started with 1. We're currently at 4. I'm titrating slowly. Like I go 2-3 weeks at the current 1 dose, but I'm currently at 4 capsules a day. Because organs have all the nutrients. They have so many, they're dense in nutrients. And this has liver, heart, kidney, pancreas, and spleen. Unfortunately, it has a gelatin capsule. Gelatin is high histamine. I have to be so careful. Like I wasn't able to take anything with a gelatin capsule before because my gut would scream at me. But I'm actually being okay with it now. Until I get everything figured out when it comes to my nutrient profile, I am taking this. I'm probably peeing it all out. It's probably not bioavailable. But this is where I'm currently at right now, is just trying to make sure I'm covered from a nutrient standpoint. I've got some lab work coming on. I'm going to be checking my folate levels, checking my ferritin levels. So I forgot my vitamin. Oh no, I didn't. I've also taken vitamin D. I was deficient last time I got tested. Of course, I live in the Pacific Northwest, so pretty much everyone here is deficient. Down in Texas, you may be fine. But the naturopathic doctor for a couple months had me taking like 50,000 IUs once a week and then 10,000 every other day of the week. Did that for about 2 months, and now I'm down to 5,000 IUs a day. I take this, but I also go out in the sun. So I try not to make it completely vitamin D, but honestly, no matter where you're at as diet-wise, if you are in the Pacific Northwest, you should be taking vitamin D. It's good for your immune system. It's good for your nervous system. And then I am also taking iodoral, which is iodine. I take 2 of these a day. It has iodine and iodide. And I started taking this after I watched Dr. Barry's interview with Dr. Bernstein. And he said that with his patients, at a minimum, he has them taking 25 milligrams a day of iodine. So I take that as well. So this is a work in process for me. I'm still trying to figure everything out and work with my doctor, do periodic lab tests just to see where I'm at. I'm learning as I go. So I'm not saying you should take these. I'm just saying this is what I take. And, it may be something that's different that you need, especially since you got Hashimoto's. But I would say look into Dr. Bernstein, his iodine. He has a book on iodine. There's also another book that I recently read about the thyroid. I'll go find it. I'll put a link below that was really helpful about iodine and thyroid disease. So I think that Dr. Bernstein actually recommends even higher dose for his patients with Hashimoto's. I think he's had some fantastic results. People with Hashimoto's with supplementing with iodine. Okay, so I do take Element, and I have to salt load. So this may not be for you. Okay, and a lot of people start the carnivore diet and they take an electrolyte supplement but at the beginning, and then they find they don't need it. But I have orthostatic intolerance. And so the cardiologist that I saw told me, yeah, you need to eat more, make sure you get more salt than an average person. So I probably don't get enough. Like, I salt my meat like crazy with the salts that I mentioned. But I do have coffee. Now, I use the Bulletproof brand coffee because it is tested for mold and it's supposedly clean when it comes to mold. I have one regular size mug of coffee, but I do put a little bit of heavy cream in it. It's not the greatest. And again, there was a period of time where I couldn't have coffee. I couldn't have any cream. I was literally just eating beef and lamb, and that's it. And for the most part, that's what I currently eat. But I have developed some tolerance now, and in the morning I can have a cup of my Bulletproof coffee. I put a little bit of heavy cream in it, and like I said, it's not the greatest. The heavy cream has some carrageenan in it, so if it ever causes problems for me, I'll let everybody know. But then, and I put 1 packet of the chocolate Element. And again, not the greatest. I mean, it does have some stevia in it. It does have some stuff in it. It's not just the plain. And there's people who are like, oh yeah, I'm only going to have the plain Element. I just have to figure out what I can do and what I can't. And, sometimes I can go without the coffee, and sometimes I want a little bit of a flavor. So that's what I do. Again, not recommending anybody else do it, but so far it hasn't caused me any issues. And I'm more for food freedom as long as it's not causing you problems and it's helping you and definitely not hurting you. And I feel like, I didn't start doing this until maybe the last couple of months. I had to do a lot of restrictive eating and really lower that histamine bucket before I could start trying a few of these extra things. As far as what I eat, so like I love ribeye, of course, and I'm very fortunate that we're in a good place financially, and so we can go out and splurge, and we can, buy our ribeye. I make sure it's not aged, and I do eat, every once in a while, I eat Chomp's beef sticks. It has a little bit of paprika in it and a couple other seasonings that are a little higher in histamine. And so sometimes I can eat those and sometimes I can't. Right now, I'm doing okay with them. I do maybe once or twice a week. I make a egg yolk scramble. And I do that. Sometimes I add a little bit of cream into it and I just put salt. If you want to use pepper, avoid black pepper because it's high histamine, but white pepper is fine as far as a histamine standpoint. So you could do salt and white pepper. And if you're going to do eggs, I would do just egg yolks. Again, you add some water, fluff them up, it makes them fluffy, and I just kind of replace the whites with water. And it's not gross. It really isn't. It actually tastes pretty good. And a lot of times what I'll do is I'll put it on with my meat, and I'll eat a bite of meat with some of the eggs. And that's been good. But that's been pretty recent that I've been able to add that back. And I don't do it every day, because no matter how well you try to separate the eggs from the whites, you still get some whites. So I do have to be careful. And I forgot to bring it with me, but I do have a DAO enzyme. It's called histamine digest. There's a bunch of them out there, but it is the enzyme that helps with digesting histamine. So if there's any time when I think that I may be getting histamine and I don't, beyond what I can tolerate, or just I'm out someplace eating, I'll just take the enzyme. Most of the time it works, but if I've had too much histamine, it doesn't work. Like when I had the scrambled eggs and the bacon and I ended up paying for it. That did not work. Occasionally I'll have a bite of cheese, but in general, other than a little bit of heavy cream, I avoid dairy like the plague. So what my day looks like is I wake up, I make my coffee, I have a magic bullet, so I just whiz it up in the bulletproof with the magic bullet, and it kind of it feels like a latte, and so I enjoy that. I like the watermelon flavor of the element. I drink one of these in the afternoon. I drink water the rest of the day. I'm pretty bad about drinking enough water, but I need to drink plenty of water, especially because of the orthostatic intolerance. Let me think. So yeah, that's pretty much it. I rarely have fish. Rarely have fish. On a rare occasion, I will have some salmon. But basically, from day to day, I would say I usually have just either beef, or I'll have like lamb steaks or lamb chops. I have a subscription to Imperfect Foods, and so we don't get any of their vegetables, but I do order ribeye from them, and they have these lamb sausages that are pretty clean. I'm tolerating those well, so I'll put those in the air fryer. And actually, most of the meat that I cook, I put in the air fryer. And for fats, I use beef tallow, and that was all I could use for quite a while. And then I was able to then tolerate some ghee. And now I can actually tolerate some butter, but it has to be sweet cream butter, because cultured butter is high in histamine, but sweet cream butter is low histamine. So I found that I can tolerate sweet cream butter now. And so that's good, because butter is great. And I don't use it a lot. Occasionally, like I'll cook my scrambled eggs in it, or if I have I don't ever have fried eggs, sorry. I was having fried eggs for a little bit, but I was paying for it from a histamine standpoint. The scrambled eggs, I can go ahead and put some butter, sweet cream butter in there, and I do okay. And let's see, I'm trying to think. Yeah, I think that's pretty much it that I use as far as added fats. Early on, I was adding beef tallow to my meat when I air fried it. I'm not doing that anymore. And I gave it a nice crisp, but I like it without it. So I'm trying to think if that's it. Okay, I think did I answer all of your questions? Let's see. Oh yeah, that's right. I started talking about the medications, but I got off on a tangent. Okay, so McKenna, you said you're desperate and alone. No one understands it. Oh gosh, I hate that feeling. I totally relate, especially when doctors, they don't have no clue. It's frustrating. Yeah, I see you became an empty nester. You didn't deal with it well. I know it's hard. It's definitely hard. And I think I'm coping pretty well, to be honest. But of course, my daughter's only going to live like 20 minutes away. So, and it's also helpful that I can do more now. Like if you're feeling sick and miserable and then you become an empty nester and yeah, that could be really hard. I could definitely see that. So you asked, is there a video from the beginning that you have where you say what you do when you wake up till you go to bed and what you eat, etc.? Well, maybe this is going to be it because I have not done that. We'll see. Do you drink bulletproof coffees? Yes, I think I answered that already. Okay, keep going through your videos and I'm not finding anything. Please help. Okay, so I hope that this helps. So lately, and of course what I'm doing changes a lot because I'm on this journey of learning and figuring out what I need at what point in the journey do I need what. So recently what I've been doing, and I think I mentioned that in my video weigh-in video today, is that I've been trying to get to bed earlier, get up before sunrise, get first light, do grounding, get my bare feet on the grass, on the ground. I have my rebounder, which is really helpful. Skincare, I did not address skincare. I use Melaleuca soap, just bar soap. I have found, and I use all their cleaning products too, because I have chemical sensitivities. Anything that's chemical, as far as cleaning products, will give me a really, really bad headache. And so I use the Melaleuca products, and they have worked fine for me. I'm sure there's others out there that are really clean. But I just use their bar soap. It's like a glycerin soap, but it's not like a clear glycerin. It has some other stuff in it. It has tea tree oil, which is good for your skin, but that's all I do. Well, and so I wash my face with that. I wash my body with that. And then as far as any moisturizer, I just use their Renew, which is also a Melaleuca product. It's called Renew Daily Lotion. Nothing fancy. Like literally nothing fancy. But with that said, I inherited my mom's skin. And my mom was like 91 and she still looked really amazing. I mean, hardly any wrinkles. And we tend to have oilier skin. So using a ton of skin products has not really been a thing for me, and it wasn't a thing for her. So some people have to use more, but as far as cleanliness, as far as not having a bunch of chemicals in them, I found that the Melaleuca products work great for me. I think that's it. Did I answer everything? Anyways, I think I answered everything. If I didn't, please let me know. But I hope that this helps. Again, I really want to emphasize that things change as you go. And so if I was just getting started, instead of going and doing all the carnivore foods, I would be sticking with low histamine and just the beef and the lamb. I didn't see a huge turn in my progress until I went with the lion diet. And I was at least 6 weeks where I was strict. Beef, lamb, salt. I had beef tallow, but that was basically it. I wasn't having coffee. I wasn't doing any cream. I think I was still doing the electrolytes because I needed them for the orthostatic intolerance. But that was basically all I was doing. And that's when I really saw the improvement in my symptoms. And then I gradually started testing some things, and am still kind of testing my limits and my tolerances. And if I start to have symptoms, like say, for example, when I was eating a little bit of eggs, like whole eggs, and I was doing okay, but that I did too much. And it was that bacon and eggs that just put me over the edge. So I would say drain that histamine bucket first, with being really, really strict with what you're eating. And again, watch that histamine video. That'll help you get some specifics on, some things that maybe you hadn't considered as far as high histamine. And then go from there. And I get the frustration with the doctors. I totally do. So maybe you can find an allergist and, that will help you and see if you can get a diagnosis. But honestly, the treatment is, the antihistamines, avoiding your triggers, and again, get tested for mold, see if that's a factor. Unfortunately, with the mold, the first thing that was recommended to me was an infrared sauna, which I can't do. So my doctor said, just let's see if we can get you to sweat it out. Well, I don't really sweat and I can't handle the heat. So that was a challenge. As far as your cold intolerance too, if you can get your histamine bucket drained, you will probably find that your heat intolerance and your cold intolerance start to improve. But I would also say slowly and very gradually expose yourself to a little bit, just for a tiny little period of time, a little bit of cold, a little bit of heat, and not enough to give you a reaction. But our bodies, once you're done with your healing, I wouldn't say don't do that now, but if you can get your histamine bucket down and you start to feel better, then enough healing has taken place that you might find that you can start testing those things. That's what I've been doing, and it took me a long time, honestly, to be able to get to the point where the healing was enough so that I could feel like I could safely test some of those limits. And so I found that as I test these things, I can do a little more and a little more and a little more until, hopefully someday I'll be more like a normal person. Not there yet, but as my video on Saturday with the walk showed, I'm getting there for sure. And I'm definitely getting there with cold intolerance as well. So, do not do a cold plunge. Absolutely. For us, cold may be 50 degrees. It may not, it's not going to be plunge yourself into a freezing cold tub of water. No, don't do that. But anyways, I have gone on and on. This is a long video, but this is a video specifically for you, McKenna. I hope it helps. I hope that, hope you can come at least out for a little bit to the meetup in Austin. I'd love to meet you, and I know how hard it is to feel like you're all alone. So don't ever hesitate to respond to my videos. Hopefully I'll get better, and I'll be getting caught up with responding to the comments from everybody. I appreciate everybody's comments, and I hope that this is helpful to more than just McKenna. I hope that there are others that find some benefit in this. And again, really, really want to emphasize that, you got to figure out what works for you. And I don't mean this in a way of trying to not give you guidance. This is part of the guidance, is pay attention to your own body symptoms. What I react to may be different than what you react to. And so once you get past a period where you've been very, very strict and you lower that histamine bucket, then you're going to have to figure out what you can tolerate. It may be a little different than what I can tolerate. I hope that is clear, and it's, and then again, that was basically the reason why I was not really that excited about sharing what I eat every day, because I know that I'm kind of an oddball. So a lot of people can eat a lot more than I can, but thank you so much for pointing out that there are people out there who are like me, who hopefully will benefit from getting at least a taste, a little picture into what my journey has been like, and how I have made my choices, and how things have progressed over the months that I've been doing this. So, all right, that's it. Have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.